arbitrage on this trend has been margin called.
Think you was a hook, trusted your idols, now they got you shook. Believe in the crooks, held up the same. Are they cooking the books? Save up a decade, now lost in a day. Another new M-Rap just getting away. Bigger the bag, bigger ripple effect. When it all blows up, it is you who will pay.
Behind the ass, inside the success. Pull back the curtains and what do you get? And it's the risk with a big safety net. Made from your savings and 401k. Give it to the other side of the trade. Socialized losses while reaping the gain. First to fall in this reckless war. Cause you're just a pawn in the cotillion this game.
When money talks and pay for the show, pay for the clout, pay for the thrill, pay for the media to lie to our face. Distort the truth so we repeat our mistakes. Sell us a dream that never delivers, while raking in fees and clipping the ticket. Siphoning funds from the mouth of the spigot. Blind leads are blind till we're all complicit. Money is cheap, get addicted to growth. Commingle the risks so nobody knows. How far it'll go to a damaged collateral. Another excuse for oppressive control. And government capture is part of the play. Reapers of value at the end of the day. We're calling for help but nobody came. No bailouts for poor ones that can play this game.
When money deeply rots at the core, don't believe intentions are pure. This crypto contagion stems from a system that incentivized fraud. As schemes get more complex and fallible humans left unchecked. Playing the dark is how you get wrecked, and that our economies are largely X.
Hello, yo plebs. Welcome to another episode of BOB Radio. BOB stands for Build on Bitcoin, where we talk to Bitcoin builders from around the globe. This is episode 13, and our very special guest this episode, we have Tip and Z, and Mr. Maddnz, or otherwise known as James. Welcome, Tip and James. How are you doing today?
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, doing great. Thank you.
Perfect. Really glad to have a couple of New Zealanders on the show because I remember listening to you guys maybe a couple weeks ago on Lucas's show, the Global Bitcoin Fest. So that was very interesting because those shows you get into the history and everything else with New Zealand, and I found a lot of that interesting. So perhaps we'll have a chance to talk about that. Okay, to get started, I'll throw it over to my co-DJ here, Sovereign. Let's hit them up. Hi, everyone.
Can't hear you, Jan. Sorry.
What is it?
I can't hear Jan at all.
Yeah, we're gonna start with like rapid fire questions.
Okay, awesome.
So you go first, Tip. Ready?
Okay, ready.
Thailand or New Zealand?
Oh my God. Why would you start with that? Why would you ask me that? I'm a citizen of the world, so I'm not choosing. I'm choosing both. Okay, next question.
All right. How long does it take to produce one of your videos?
It depends. Sometimes like days, sometimes months. So it depends on how deep of a dive I go and how much I know about the topic already.
Favorite thing about Orange?
The Bitcoiners. I can go in there anywhere in the world and I can hang out with Bitcoiners from around the world. So I'm in Thailand right now and I can hop into Orange and hang out with people from New Zealand, and it's like I never left. So that's my favorite part.
Lovely. All right, James, your turn.
Okay. Yep, I'm ready.
First, who orange pilled you?
That's actually a hard one. It was a deep dive with lots of people, but back when I was into it, some of the voices that were really influential were like Andreas Antonopoulos.
Okay, so Andreas would be like the one.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. How does one survive in Orange?
It's a great question. Orange is just like the real world. So surviving comes down to taking personal responsibility and really being willing to trade with others to make progress rather than just trying to steal from others, because your reputation does follow you.
Okay, so this links to like the last question. Has Orange taught you any life lesson?
Yeah, it feels like I'm learning life lessons every day. It's a constant challenge. There's constantly things I have to learn, and it's my first time really scaling something up like this. It's growing this quickly, so there are lots of lots of things I'm learning.
Lovely. Thank you so much, guys. I'll pass the mic to Piccolo.
All right, guys. So on this next part, we talk about your personal journey. And the first question is, can you guys briefly introduce yourselves and your Orange Pill journey, especially how you guys came to overlap and, you know, how this Orange project got started? And feel free to, you know, maybe James, you go first this time.
Yeah, sure. So my Bitcoin journey would have started, I mean, the first time I heard about Bitcoin would have been in the university dorms when it was being used on the Silk Road. But it was in 2013 when it bubbled up to $100 that I dismissed it. You know, I was a finance graduate student, so I was thinking it was probably some kind of internet scam. And then later in that year, when it went all the way to $1,000, I was actually interning at New Zealand Sovereign Wealth Fund with Tip, and I was looking into alternative asset classes. And so I was spending the whole summer just going deep into Bitcoin, and that really was where I became obsessed about it. And then since then, it's just been a long bumpy ride.
But you know, just now when you answered the question, who orange pilled you, I kind of thought maybe that sort of internship had something to do with it, no? With you and Tip?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, you know, every day trying to, it was at that point in time, it was really any content you could find about Bitcoin was useful content because it was so, still so small back then. So any content creators that were actually trying to articulate their thoughts were really helpful. Andreas was really good at articulating the way he perceived Bitcoin, and that was really useful.
Absolutely. Okay, Tip, over to you.
Yeah, actually, the person that orange pilled me was James. So he was definitely interested in Bitcoin well before I understood what it was. So in 2013, that was when I first heard of Bitcoin, and that was when I first met James as well. And I thought of him as this Bitcoin guy in our intern group, and I didn't really put too much thought into what Bitcoin was. It was only in 2021 that I kind of really went down my own rabbit hole. And that was when James showed me Alex Gladstein's video, Why Bitcoin Matters for Human Rights. And that video just blew my mind, because before that, I just thought Bitcoin was like, you know, a financial product or something. I wasn't too interested. But the reason that that angle meant a lot to me was growing up, I was exposed to Thai politics through my dad's work, and kind of saw that power struggle of a proof of stake system and how vulnerable our rights were to, you know, a few central points of failure, and how dangerous it is to build a system that puts the power to control others' lives through the hands of a few. And so that was the lens that I viewed it from. And then again, working in the finance industry, when I was investing other people's money, I saw that same proof of stake incentive play out again, where, you know, you have a few people allocating a large amount of public money through our own, you know, individual lens, which tends to be quite narrow and biased. And so we end up creating a society that's narrow and biased. And again, we end up feeding the system that puts the power of control over others into the hands of a few. So that was when I became really excited about Bitcoin, because it gives each of us the ability to, you know, grow our wealth in our own custody, and we can allocate our own capital to solve our own problems and shape the world in a more decentralized and diversified way. And that just seems like a much better way to build society. So that was kind of my rabbit hole and my first kind of exposure to Bitcoin, where I was like, oh, I finally get it. But yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Uncensorable money, right? You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up to that, kind of now that you're back here, and again, we're deep in the midst of sort of another political, you know, shifting of the winds, and what do you think? Have things changed? In many ways they have, with sort of social media, information technology, but in many ways, isn't it still proof of stake in terms of politics and governments? I don't know. I mean, I'm curious, because you said you had that experience as a young person, and then now that you're sort of seeing it, you know, I think this is the cusp of another political shift, at least in Thai political scene?
I still think politics is not a sustainably effective way of getting things done, because it just relies too heavily on a handful of humans who aren't perfect. And if they are, great people, they're not immortal. So if you build these current systems around a particular person or particular groups of people, they're going to have to, face the succession issue. And if you build these systems where levers can be pulled by only a couple of people, you're giving them way too much power. And the current system where nation states especially can issue their own money, it doesn't incentivize people on the helm to be productive contributors of society when you're, bestowed the power to allocate your nation's time and energy like that. And I don't think like central bankers and politicians, they need to obey the same laws of physics as the rest of us. Like you cannot print energy. So I think now that there's Bitcoin, the best thing you can do as a politician is advocate for it, implement a Bitcoin standard, add Bitcoin to your country's reserve, and then get out of the way.
Yeah, that's one view. I mean, obviously you have the more analytic view of let's just hodl and stack, and if they want to come and get it, that type of thing. But again, you've met me, so you know why I say things like that. Hey James, back to you. Based on what Tip was saying, you're like patient zero for Bitcoin in New Zealand, almost, right? Or how did that feel? Was it a lonely time, and how have things developed from then to now?
I certainly don't feel like a patient zero. I mean, there's lots of people who are in a lot earlier than me, and there were lots of services actually in the early days as well, people trying to help each other out in New Zealand. I think what is interesting is that your perception of Bitcoin in the bull market years, so that's 2013, 2017, and 2021, when you're into Bitcoin in those years, and there's constant positive media and for everywhere you look, every avenue about Bitcoin during that year, you feel like the whole world knows about Bitcoin. You feel like everyone gets it. You feel like everyone's now a Bitcoiner, and
Number
not
go
everyone's now
up,
Bitcoin.
baby. Number
Yeah.
go up.
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
I had to say that.
But it felt like in 2013 when it went all the way up to $1,000, and I was interested in like finance. I was working at a fund and I was studying banking and everything. It felt like everyone knew about it because the headlines were everywhere. But then, in the bear market years between 2018 and between 2013 and 2017, it kind of just disappears from people's minds. And so you do feel very lonely in the bear market. I think right now it's probably the Bitcoin community feels a lot smaller than it was in 2021. But when you're actually in the community now, networking amongst the people, it's actually when it's growing at its like most sustainable rate. You've got people really devoting their time to it. Whereas during the bull market years, it's kind of people coming and passing by and just interested in it for a hot minute.
Yep. Okay. I mean, just now, Sovereign looked at me and, he whispered, not at Bob, in terms of people actually talking about Bitcoin and, going down the different rabbit holes. But I think that's a very selective thing, isn't it? And maybe that's a good segue into, what you're trying to build with respect to Orange Mart community building in New Zealand. But before I pass it to Sovereign, I just want to do a PSA that for any of our audience listening and would like to dig deeper into the New Zealand, its history and the Bitcoin scene, do check out the Global Bitcoin Fest episode on New Zealand. Excellent one. Okay, Sovereign, over to you.
All right, thank you guys. Let's get into Orange. But before that, could you please explain to the audience who's not familiar with Rust, what is Rust about? And then, we'll explain what you guys are doing with Orange on top of Rust.
So Rust is it's a PC game. It's almost 10 years old now, and the way it was funded was an early access alpha release. So they released the game really before that actually built the game. And then every month for the last, I think it's about 9 years now, every month they've been releasing an update to the game. So it's in continuous development. The basic premise is you wake up on an island with nothing, with other people on the island, and the only objective is to survive. There's no prescription or rules telling you what to do or how to behave or anything like that. It's just a pure survival game. And the way Orange fits into that is we host an island. We're one of the server providers because Rust themselves, the official game developers, opened that up to let a bunch of people host their own community servers and modify the game and the way it works to their liking.
Okay, so basically Orange is a server of Rust, right? Now, you guys are trying to get Bitcoin involved with it. How are you trying to do so? And for how long have you been doing this?
We launched the server at the start of this year, so we're 6 months into it now. So Rust, the lore of Rust, or like the story of Rust, is still being developed, and something that came out recently was what it stands for, and it stands for Repopulation Unit Survival Test. Because the way the server operates is every month when the new update comes out to the game, the island is wiped. You could think of it like a nuclear bomb going off, and everything you've built over that month is lost and destroyed, and you start again from scratch. So we see it as an opportunity every month to run a test, a survival test, but the incentive mechanism that we've added into it to really help our server grow into a large, thriving community, we've added in Bitcoin as a reward for doing proof of work. And that's really changing the way people behave. And some servers, they go on there and just grief each other and just, I guess, kill each other.
Can you explain me how does that work? Do you guys have like some sort of like free contributions if you do X, Y, and Z, like bounties, missions? How is like Bitcoin payments integrated into the game itself?
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways it can be done, and there's going to be lots of different ways that Orange experiments with it. At the moment, the most successful way we've had is by introducing a new item to the loot table, which is like a new rare drop or reward that can only be found when you complete challenging missions. So on this island, there are some challenging missions like taking over an oil rig. And that item, the theme we've kind of come up with is that the item you find blood bags, like where people have donated their blood. And if you can collect those blood bags and return them to the blood bank, the Bitcoin blood bank, the blood bank will pay you in Bitcoin for your contribution. And so that's like a ongoing incentive throughout the month to encourage people to go out there and explore the island and complete those missions. Another thing is that you can upload your own QR codes to signs. You can use vending machines and trade windows and chat to trade with other players. So you actually can also trade items with each other and charge people Bitcoin if you like to. We're still experimenting with how that could be integrated more seamlessly. But at the moment, it's very similar to just a real world where you go up to a cafe and they just have a QR code or something like that.
Right. So if I want to join Orange, do I need to own my own wallets? How does that work? Does the like server provide the wallet for like every single player?
So that's not something that we've done yet. It's definitely something we could do.
Right.
Would be quite easy to have a plugin for that. But we wanted to, since we're mainly distributing sats, distributing Bitcoin, we wanted people to be able to bring their own wallet and use whatever wallet they want to use to hold their Bitcoin. And we didn't want the server to be a party to every trade within the server, because then we're exposed to liability. We want people to trade peer to peer. And so we're trying to facilitate BYO wallet, bring your own wallet. And that's been working. So what we're using as a main mechanism to distribute sats is a website called LightSats. LightSats allows us to create those LN URL type vouchers with the added benefit of if someone gets a voucher, but they actually don't go ahead and claim the sats and withdraw it to their custody, after a certain amount of time, it just returns back to us. And so we don't have any like wasted Bitcoin.
James?
Yep. Sorry. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. So how big is the community right now? How many players you've got in Rust, in Orange? Sorry.
So the last 2 wipes, so every wipe is a month long. We've been averaging around 80 players each month. And the community is probably a bit larger than that because there are people involved in the community that aren't actively playing the game. It's kind of a game where you have to be in the mood to devote a month of your life to it.
I see. And have you noticed if within like it's the same server, people try to create like their own communities, their own tribes, or like usually it gravitates towards like the same group of people, where like everyone's peaceful?
Yes, so lots of people form clans or teams and they fight each other. A lot of that happens. I guess the play style that we try to encourage is we want people to learn to play solo. They don't have to play solo, but it's good for people to learn all the ways of surviving on their own so that they can become really competent and really strong individual player. But yeah, you can definitely join teams. There's lots of teams, and there are feuding factions on the island and people out to get each other. A lot of that happens.
I was talking to Tip the other day, and it's funny because here at Bob we have weekly meetups, and she told me like once in a time you guys also have like education talks at Rust where like people just sit around in a bonfire, and you have like a host where like it's gonna explain to like newbies what like Bitcoin is, basically, right? So I was thinking, at some point at Bob we should like join Rust and do like a Bob meetup in the Orange server. Why not?
Yeah, that would be awesome. The great thing about the server is that it's basically a recording studio. So we can build custom sets. We've built like a stage for our meetup this weekend where someone's going to be talking to us about Bitcoin wallets. And so we've got a stage set up. We've got chairs. We're going to have a live stream.
Could
and
we
then we're going to create some
replicate
content.
Bob's house into like Orange?
What was that? Sorry?
If we could like replicate Bob's house into Orange server. Bob's space.
Yeah, you could build an awesome Bob's house right here in Orange. It'll be great. I'm trying to encourage everyone in Bitcoin to want to have a presence on the island so they can promote their Bitcoin products and services to everyone who visits the island.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Now that I heard that, my ears just perked up because, I'm not that big of a gaming guy, but as sort of you guys were talking about what is it called? The virtual town hall with respect to people being able to not only get educated, but exchange ideas in that forum that you replicate, whatever it is, a physical space, a virtual space, etc. Yeah, that's really interesting. So at least from my perspective, I'm let's say a little bit older than Sovereign and probably you guys. Now, as an older Bitcoiner, why should I care? Or why should, let's say, sort of diehard Bitcoiners who don't game care about Orange Mart?
I think a good answer to that is when's the last time you spoke to a 15-year-old about Bitcoin? Because that's really one of the main motivations behind this. Is that every day I look on Twitter and there's Bitcoiners screaming at the top of their lungs that the world is ending and that everyone's stupid if they don't read the Bitcoin standard and learn how to run a node and self-custody. Well, teenagers aren't paying attention to that. That's not a very it's not helping them use Bitcoin and get into Bitcoin because they're the ones who are going to grow up and actually build the future of Bitcoin. So this is a really good venue to interact with younger people. And actually, funnily enough, it's been quite interesting to see some of the older Bitcoiners who are playing on the server have actually introduced their kids to it and are helping their kids learn about Bitcoin in the game.
I'd also add that, like, as someone, I don't usually play games as well, but since playing Rust and being introduced to gaming, I didn't realize how like technologically advanced gaming platforms are, and how much of like the mainstream like social media copies what already existed years ago in the gaming community. Like gamers had Discord before companies had Slack, they had video calls before Zoom, and Twitch live streams before TikTok and YouTube. So I think as a normie, like a person who's not gaming, like the next logical evolution of our online interaction makes sense to be like a multi-person space online. And I don't necessarily see that as a game per se, where you're like going in and into this make-believe world, but you know, you're in this virtual world, but you're actually interacting with real people using real money sets and expending real time and energy. You're building real reputations and, you know, writing code that changes real incentives. So when you hear like virtual world, it doesn't mean that things are made up. It's just a different mode in which I think humans will interact and conduct commerce and gain opportunities. And the advantage is that because virtual, it's borderless and scalable. So you don't necessarily need to replicate Bob's space, the house. You can build whatever you want, you know, and create Bob's space with the limits of your mind. And so I think there's just a lot of potential there to scale much more than meet space as well. And you know, since we have friendships and connections all over the world, I'm sure you have friendships and connections around the world from your time living abroad, Piccolo. I think we don't necessarily all live in the same physical location, but in this immersive world online, you can spend quality time with the people that you care about and do activities in a way that you just can't do in Zoom calls or on Twitter.
Great. Both excellent answers. And actually, when was the last time I talked to a teenage Bitcoiner? Not in almost a year, you know, at a particular conference, but you're right. Those young people are the future of Bitcoin, because by the time Bitcoin monetizes, I mean, I would have been dead and those are the guys who would then be building on Bitcoin, right? And then Tip, in terms of what you added with respect to not only virtualizing, but going beyond the limits of our physical imagination and actually doing so by using digital money that's, you know, that can't be copied. That's a thing. And cool. Okay. So, and then it also struck me and made me realize a little bit that actually, at least as an older person, you kind of get pulled into not games specifically, but gamification without even realizing it, right? When you even interact on you know, certain platforms, even like Twitter, things like that, there are many aspects of gamification that are being, you know, thrown at you, and you're being A/B tested without quite really knowing about it. So okay, thank you both. Sarvan, I'll throw it back to you.
So what are like the next steps for Orange right now? What are you guys trying to improve for the server?
That's a great question. Every month we're trying to make progress on the previous month, and there's a lot of different things that we're slowly making progress on, and it all kind of culminates in a much bigger vision. So what I'd like it to get to is a world where there's a constant population living there. At the moment, at the peak, there might be 20 people on at a time, and at the downtime, there might be only 2 or 3. But the server can handle 200 at a time, so that would be a cool goal for population. Another thing is the content that we produce. So another way to think about Orange is that it's a 24/7 meetup space or Bitcoin conference. And so we can really produce some high quality cinematic content, educational and also scripted and storytelling. And finally, Orange is a community. It's a clan. It's representing Bitcoin on the global stage of esports. And so not only is it the esport arena, which we're trying to attract global players to, but it's also the esport team, which we're trying to dominate on the global stage and put Orange on top. So yeah, that's what I think is the future.
One thing that I'm currently quite bullish about Orange is like when we see new coiners join Orange, like some people start off completely not even knowing what Bitcoin is, and they're like, you know, like, oh, I heard that, you know, I can come and earn some Bitcoin here. Like, how do I get some? And they've never held Bitcoin before. But then through like playing and hanging out in the world, they start to like earn Bitcoin and they spend it within their world or somewhere else, and then they learn to self-custody it, and then they attend meetups in Orange, and then they learn more about Bitcoin. And within matter of days, they go from like zero knowledge to self-custody rather than taking years to get to that point. And so I think nurturing that new way of orange pilling people, that shortening the Bitcoin user journey is something that I'd love to keep focusing on, so that we keep drawing in and orange pilling new people in new weird ways that we've never thought about. Like, not another video, not another lecture on monetary theory, but just like open this global playground of like borderless commerce and just like endless action, and we'll just see what happens. Like every month, like James said, is an experiment. So yeah, that's what I'm most excited about.
Lovely. Thank you, Tip. I'll ask you like the last question, and then I'll pass the mic over to Piccolo. Why Rust? And do you guys have like any other intentions on migrate to other bigger games like Minecraft or like any sort of multiplayer online games?
Oh, sorry, I was I was trying to unmute my microphone. So to answer the question, why Rust? Rust is, I think, usually it's the top 2 or it's in the top 5 every day on Steam as the most active game, and it's crazy that 9 years into it, it's still active and growing. So it's a growing game. It's also a very open game with the development, allowing us to heavily modify it and take it in a direction we want to take it. But also respecting the constant development from the developers, and the new game that they release every month effectively is really creates new content for players. And the cinematic side of it, being able to record demos, go into them after the fact, record different angles, really makes content creation. Like some of these Rust content creators on YouTube have millions and millions of subscribers and views, and it's crazy the quality of the video content they can make. So there's a lot of reasons why Rust, and I do think at its core, it's just the ultimate survival game. I would say Minecraft's really interesting. It's kind of like a similar premise to Rust, and there's no reason why the Orange community can't also have some fun playing on a Minecraft server.
I'd also add that Rust is one of the very few games that aligns very strongly with Bitcoin values, and one of them is proof of work. Like it's inherently a proof of work game because you wake up with nothing on the beach and you have to expend real time and energy, banging away at a tree to build a hatchet, to build a house, to build a store. Then you start trading and building a vending machine. So you can't just show up and everything's done for you. Maybe you can pay sats for someone to do that, but you're exchanging energy for energy. So fundamentally, it's such a pure way of teaching people about trade and teaching people lessons, like James said earlier, about personal responsibility. The game, there's no rules, so people can kill you and take your stuff. That's what happens in real world as well. And so it's a really good way to teach, especially children.
More than we would like to admit, right, Tip?
Absolutely. But it's human nature. Like when you play Rust, you see the true side of humans come out, and it's actually so fascinating. It's the ultimate experiment of human psychology, because you see people get hurt and they put real time and energy into something, and then someone raid them and take their stuff, and then they go out for revenge. So it's kind of like you are actually running this world and learning real life lessons of how do you respond when these things happen to you. And the cool thing is that we're teaching people to not leave stuff in your base and actually take your sats into your own custody so people can't steal it. So that really aligns with the Bitcoin ethos of, self-custodying as well. So there's so many little elements when you start playing, you're like, wow, this is such a great way to learn about Bitcoin principles and behaviors, and not just hear about it or get taught it. You're actually living by your values.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of teaching proof of work subliminally while you're having fun and then earning sats. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. All right. You guys want to talk memes and memetic warfare? Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I guess, I might be a better person to talk about this because honestly speaking, before I got into Bitcoin and Bitcoin Twitter 2-3 years ago, I didn't know what a meme was. And then now if you look at Piccolo, me, my profile, everything, that whole thing's a meme. So, and then if you ask me what a meme is, I can't quite describe it. So maybe the first question is, Tip and James, what is a meme to you guys? How would you define it? If you had to explain it to your parents, like, you know, mom comes up, hey, what's a meme?
I would say that a meme is something that is quite simple, but it holds the meaning of something quite complex. And I think memes stand the test of time. The best memes that stand the test of time hold truth in them as well. And that's why I think Bitcoiners are actually quite effective in creating memes, because they understand proof of work, something like distilling something complex into something simple, and then they understand the truth in what needs to be conveyed. Like if you're doing a meme about, you know, how Ethereum will change the world, that meme probably won't be relevant in 10 years' time. So it's kind of like, those are the two elements of a meme that I think is important and would describe what a meme is.
Cool. James?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I agree with Tip there with the distilling complex ideas down into simple messages. That's really what it's all about. It's about like trying to convey to people, again, conveying to younger people too, just like if you can convey something in a funny way, in a simple way, but really behind it is a deep philosophical or moral way of life and thinking, it's almost like, I guess, like the parables or whatever it is in the Bible, you know, all those short little stories. Proverbs, that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And I also like to call them propaganda just because of how effective they are at marketing. So propaganda doesn't have to be negative, but propaganda in the sense that we want to repeatedly hammer home those key points, you know, not your keys, not your coins. People are still learning that today, 14 years into this, which is ridiculous. They're still getting rug pulled by a custodian. It's crazy. So we want kids to know from the very beginning that if you trust someone else with your keys, they are not your Bitcoin. It's an IOU. So it's simple things like that, a positive propaganda to reinforce a message.
Right. No, I'm glad you kind of mentioned that in reference to things like Proverbs, because one connection I made once I kind of realized what, you know, a meme was it made the connection back to, you know, old sayings that they teach you when you were kids, or famous sayings like, that's nothing to fear but fear itself, you know, that type of thing. And a bunch of those, right, from all different types of cultures. So is the current, you know, meme world just accelerated digital form of that? What do you guys think? Because it's been around, right? Memes. I mean, if you kind of think about it, distilling very complex ideas into very simple terms and stand the test of time, if that's the definition.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. It's the Renaissance, the second Renaissance. It's kind of just how we're communicating a message effectively. And now that we have, you know, digital, we can very easily create digital images or video images and make short little funny videos and memes. It's just a very effective tool at teaching those stories. We can do storytelling too, and we can come up with new proverbs and new what's that word when someone says something all the time? It's like a saying that they it's oversaid. I don't know.
Yeah, Sovereign was saying, is it like a mantra, something like that? A dogma, whatever that means. Yeah, I don't know what it's called. Yeah, but yeah, I understand where you're going.
I think like do you guys remember memes like from 4chan, like the troll guy and stuff like that? Like I think memes, even over the past decades, have evolved quite massively alongside like the platform of technology that's evolved. Like initially when we had, you know, blogs and Reddit, there are these standard template memes that come out and you're kind of imposing different context on them. And nowadays, you know, memes are templates of so many different types of audios and videos. And when you go on TikTok, those are memes as well, when you're using the same sound and overlaying it with different videos, or in static memes when you've got the same template and you're overlaying it with different different words and messages. So I think memes actually follow the types of technology that is evolving over time. And right now, there's just so many different types of ways that you can create memes. Like I like to think like my videos are pretty much like a stack of memes, and you just wrap it around like some audio and stuff, and that's a meme. So I think like fundamentally what the meme is the message that you're trying to get across, and the truth that's behind it that differentiates it from just another funny video or another another type of content.
Yeah, and one thing that also kind of came up as you guys were talking is looking at years past, right? Before we came into the digital age. If you look at memes, they're very generic, almost untargeted. But you look at the memes nowadays, it's very different, right? It's not only targeted at a specific subject, a specific context, but almost made for a specific audience. Because not only normie land, but even guys from shitcoin land, and they look at Bitcoin memes, some of them wouldn't get some of the more funny memes. You know what I mean? Where there almost seems to be a way of customization. I don't know if I'm saying it right. What do you guys think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Orange Mart's Twitter has its own memes that talks about, that has like inside jokes that if people haven't been to Orange Mart, they won't understand. So definitely meme is a way for people to communicate with other people within that subculture or subgroup. That's funny. It's like you're making a joke, but it's almost like an inside joke.
James, anything to add?
The word I was looking for earlier might have been cliche or idiom, but yeah. So I think for when you say like someone who is maybe in the crypto space, for example, and they see a Bitcoin specific meme and they don't get it, that's because they don't get it. That's why they're in crypto. They haven't actually learned the lesson yet of why these memes are funny. What the messages they're trying to teach. They don't relate to it yet, but that doesn't mean that they won't eventually. If it's a good meme and it stands the test of time, it'll become a commonplace phrase or expression that they will be able to relate to, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think not your keys, not your coins is definitely going to stand the test of time. Definitely hitting a lot of people hard now.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that.
Okay, so now that we've established what memes are and the importance of memes in transmitting information, as well as coalescing, let's say, different communities, around specific ideas or themes, let's kind of jump a little bit to the other side of, the brunt of the memes, right? Which are governments and central bankers. If, again, we're talking from the Bitcoin perspective. Do governments and central bankers, do they get like the meme war that we're in, or do you think they're clueless, or you think they're actually hiring memers to kind of strike back? What do you guys think, since you're in the trenches?
I think we all maybe have I don't know what the word is it stigmatized or dogmatized central bankers and governments a bit too much. They're not, the people that are actually in those positions aren't necessarily evil people. We might mean them to look like that. We might mean them in a way that makes them look like a clown because we disagree with the actions they're taking. But the actual person might just be a person that's genuinely thinking that they're doing what they're meant to be doing in the role that they're in. And I believe that anyone in that role could make just as stupid of a decision. But it's like the issue is that there is someone that has the power to make a decision. The issue isn't that specific person. I don't have a personal gripe against any of the central bankers. In fact, interesting story is that the current central bank governor in New Zealand was the boss that Tip and I both worked for at the New Zealand Superannuation Fund. And he's honestly the loveliest guy, the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And do I agree with how much money they printed and how much the currency was devalued? No, not necessarily. But do I think he had bad intentions? No, I don't think so.
Right, but sorry, Tip, before you go, I mean, just to respond to that, when and I have similar experiences where personal relationships with and friendships with people, in central banks, by themselves, very reasonable, well-intentioned people, but within the bureaucracy, you get swallowed up. So that's kind of my comment. It's probably not just him, it's them, right? It's the institution. And even them is a slightly, understatement, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's the institution, and the institution will do whatever it takes to survive because that's why it's an institution and wants to prolong its life. I think the institution has to humble itself that it has to adapt to the new war ground or the new world that we live in with Bitcoin. But as part of their strategy, they don't want to openly just surrender, because all the people that rely on the institution don't want to see the institution giving up and failing. If the whole country loses confidence in the institution, there's a general fear that the whole country would collapse. And so, if you're sitting inside the central bank and you fully understand Bitcoin and you fully believe in it, you still have an incentive to not draw attention to it while you do your best to think about how central bank money can adapt to that future of Bitcoin, is I guess the way I think about it.
Right. Okay. Let me interpret it for the plebs out there who may have the same level of intelligence as me, which I think what James is saying is the world economy is held together by, Scotch tape, and the Scotch tape is called confidence. Tip, over to you.
I think like James, pretty much the same point of view that I have. Like I mean, I've worked for government and worked for private side, worked for United Nations and stuff, and they are made up of individuals who are part of a system that at Piccolo, you're right, like there are systems that create incentives and not necessarily aligning our incentives the best way possible, like Bitcoin does. But I wouldn't go out and say like, it's them and they're bad, like and they're evil and stuff. It's just I think that's a very like black and white way of viewing it. And I would have to say that a lot of what I have learned in the finance industry and in the public sector has given me really good insight into how to communicate and teach about Bitcoin, and to like flip the script a little bit. Like I've learned some pretty awesome kind of lessons from my time in the finance industry that helps with meme creation. And like one of them being when I was investing in public equities and we're picking stocks, would ask the question like, what does the market fundamentally get wrong about this company? And in the case of meme warfare, if you apply that kind of same thinking to memes, it's like, what does the public fundamentally get wrong about this issue? And when you start there and you kind of try to find the edge and insight into what message is relevant, that's like a really awesome message to put out in the world right now, because like the people don't understand, like, this is something that's being misunderstood. So for example, when the exchanges were, collapsing or bank runs were happening, most people don't understand like the root cause is inherently the failures of fiat and the fiat system itself, that drives and incentivizes these reckless risk-taking, not necessarily by bad people, but it's because, that's the way that the system is structured. If there's free money on the table, people are going to take it and they're going to, exploit that. And so I think being part of that kind of like learning from that finance industry and the public sector, explaining kind of current affairs through the lens of fundamentals is really important. And that's a really awesome lesson that I learned that I would say that like that's something that that like I'm grateful for, like the experiences that I had, and I wouldn't want to kind of talk down and think people are evil for teaching me those awesome lessons.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, as you may or may not know, I came from the corporate finance industry. I've learned good lessons and bad lessons, some of which served me well, some of which didn't, obviously. But one thing which I really resonated with me was, and I think maybe that's what I was getting to in terms of memeing the system, is the really good memes are not ones which sling arrows at specific people or specific ideas, but more so about the underlying fundamentals behind the ideas of policies, right? Almost unraveling, let's say, opening the Pandora's box, unraveling that ball of, yarn, right? And getting to the core of the matter. That's, I think, what the good memes are. And, even with those memes, I just wonder whether the people or the system being memed will ever actually be, the word is incentivized to get it. You know what I mean? You brought up incentive systems, not bad people, but bad incentive systems. Bad incentives, have led to bad outcomes, right? And that's why we're talking Bitcoin and changing the entire incentive structure. I mean, people think it's just around money incentive structure, but as we all know, it's much, much deeper, right? Not only, the energy component, but now getting even to, let's say, the intellectual level and how we think about, well, even communities around us, how we connect and how we exchange value. So yeah, that's, I don't know, am I making sense? And did I kind of get your points correctly? I mean, I'm not talking to both of you because I'm combining both discussions.
Yeah, I would say like when I was in, working in the finance industry and I saw these Bitcoin memes, that those were the things that kind of made me like think twice about, oh, what am I doing with my life? So it really depends on the individual, like you said, whether they're incentivized to see it or not. It depends on the individual's level of bias as well, where they can admit to themselves that what they're doing is not the best path forward for humanity versus, just saying, no, I'm going to ignore this. And usually the people who ignore it end up on the wrong side of history, and they end up perpetuating a system that shouldn't, isn't working for most people. And it depends on your experience and your personal kind of worldview. Like if you are just stuck in a particular worldview where you're surrounding yourself by people who are benefiting from the system, in a financial system that works and in a country that's doing pretty well for itself, you're not incentivized to learn about this. And like we were having that chat in Bob's space a couple of weeks ago where we thought it was funny how, the younger generations in Asia and Africa understood the future of finance, which is Bitcoin, much better than the MDs in Wall Street, the guys that you knew, Piccolo. So it's like those guys aren't the ones with the time and the energy and the hunger to understand a new system that will undermine their current cash cow. But the younger generation who, are hopeless, the millennial generation are the ones who are the first generation that's worse off than the previous generations. And we're definitely feeling that. And so, of course, we have the motive and incentive and time and energy to understand, is there a better way to build this more sustainably and think about the longer term because we've got more time on this planet. So it just depends on the person, depends on the institution they're in and their own motives.
Great. James, anything to add?
Sorry, I think I've unmuted my mic now. I really liked what you said about the memes that attack an individual aren't necessarily that they're not going to stand the test of time, right? But the memes that really convey an idea or challenge a way of thinking or really kind of blow people's mind and get them to think differently are the ones that will last a lot longer. I think a related topic to this is one of the reasons we have such ill feelings towards the institutions is that they're absolutely responsible for a lot of the false narratives about Bitcoin that are being amplified by the media, and like that, not just government institutions, like the big institutional banks, like the US banks, who effectively are the government there. They actively fund and put out fake information in the news. So they're doing their own kind of meme warfare, trying to make it seem like Bitcoin is bad for the environment, trying to make it seem like Bitcoin transactions are slow and can't be used for buying a coffee. And it's like we sometimes respond to that with memes, and that's where the shit slinging or that's where the getting dirty kind of fighting happens, which is also fun to participate in because Bitcoiners win every single one of those arguments. But yeah, there's a lot of like, yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this.
Well, I think, yeah, you brought up a good point. I mean, in that sense, where we are now in, June 2023, they haven't really caught up, right? I mean, their version of memetic warfare is that's it, putting out butt pieces with the headlines that aren't even fact checked, where the headlines don't even match the content of the article, but people don't even read fucking articles, so it
But
doesn't matter. It's comedic. It's just a comedy of errors almost, right?
but if you were to check the pulse on the mainstream population on their view on Bitcoin, asking, like, for example, my boomer generation parents and their friends,
Mhm.
they see those headlines as truth because they see them repeated in what they think is trusted media, like the state-funded government and news sources in New Zealand and international ones. So they get this false impression that the world doesn't like Bitcoin because they're hearing negative things about it in the media, even though those stories are completely made up and false. So it is
Yeah.
effective, even though it's complete
Yeah.
garbage.
And this is where actually, more and more I've been leaning towards what you guys have been talking about, and Sovereign too, and our intern, which is basically trying to reach, let's say, the younger audience where their mind is polluted, but polluted by like Instagram and all these other fit shit, but they haven't been pre-programmed on listening to mass media yet. And actually they've been pre-programmed not to even check stuff on CNN, CNBC, all those mass media, right? It's from these let's say individualized social media, where actually that's where Bitcoin have a chance, because I'm gonna say, because you guys are both on, and along with all the other memers out there, Bitcoiners we're fucking great at memes, more so than a lot of these other guys. You know what I mean? So in those medium, I
Yeah,
think we have a
exactly.
great shot. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Another thought that just came to mind was I sometimes get parallels to when I was younger and peer-to-peer file sharing or torrenting was becoming a thing. And that actually led to some amazing positive outcomes for society, like the traditional media industry and the way it controlled music distribution and film distribution has been disrupted massively. And they tried to really hit back at peer-to-peer file sharing. But because young, stupid teenagers like me were just openly defying, breaking the law because we didn't know any better, we were all doing it. It became inevitable. We found a better, cheaper, faster way to get content. Why would we stick to the old way? And that's what I'm trying to hope that teenagers today see with Bitcoin. They don't have to ever have a fiat bank account, really. They can just go start making money right now anywhere on the internet using Bitcoin. It's such an explosive, disruptive thing that if everyone starts doing it, it's so amazing, and they should just do it because they don't have consequences when they're young, really.
Kids of the future.
They sure are. One maybe last question, and then sort of, we'll flip the table on you guys a little bit. I'll tell you what that is, and then go to parting thoughts. But like, as you sort of look at the way memes are, well, we talked about memetic warfare. We talked about governments, their reactions. But in terms of, the kids jumping directly into Bitcoin and not ever having a bank account, going back to what Tip was saying earlier, is that realistic for, let's say, Western countries where pretty much we're overbanked? Or is it more possible for places like Africa, Southeast Asia, and other places where the banking system haven't quite controlled, that level of activity economically yet? What do you guys think?
It will really come down to whether the merchants and traders in your country are willing to accept Bitcoin. Because if they are, then someone who's young and earning Bitcoin online and they're able to spend it in the real world as well as online, they won't ever see the need to deciding to lend their money to a bank, because that's what a deposit is. It should be illegal for them to call it savings. It's a loan to a private institution. So it's like it could become like gambling or cigarettes, like where as we mature, the future generations realize just how not financially responsible it is to lend your money to an institution. But I know what you're saying. Like fiat is so ingrained in our society, mainly because of the men with guns who force every store to accept fiat and force you to pay taxes in fiat. But that political change does happen, and whatever gets the economy growing the fastest is actually in the best interest of the administration of the economy, and they can find ways to generate tax revenue in other ways. They don't have to be so aggressive with controlling every transaction.
I think like as we see more just commerce being done online, like even through Orange, where people are all over, like around the world, whether they're kids or adults, whatever, just like earning and exchanging sats between each other. It's like it becomes less relevant exactly where they are in a arbitrary nation state border. Like in terms of like being able to earn money, you can earn anywhere in the world because Bitcoin like can be moved anywhere in the world. But like James said, I would agree, like it depends on if you need to buy food with Bitcoin, that requires you like a sort of physical location accepting sets. But I mean, if you want to, pay for content or pay for things that you can consume online in virtual worlds, then I don't think geography has much of a factor nowadays.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, because I actually, look at where adoption sort of will go, especially in these countries. And you're right, if it's physical location, you do have to have, the underlying merchant accepting Bitcoin or the underlying payment infrastructure. But yeah, paying for game content, skins on games, yeah, no borders necessary. Okay, cool. All right, let's flip the table. You ready, Sovereign? Or you have anything else, Sovereign? Or okay, cool. All right. Before we end the show, we let our guests flip the table on our guests and let you guys each ask us, either both of us, one of us, or neither of us, a question. If you don't have a question, then we can just move to wrap. Tip, you have a question for us?
Yes, I do. But just before going to the question, I want to address your comment about people, buying skins on games and stuff. Like that's not the only thing they can buy. I think with AI and stuff as well, you can pay sats for, AI to do work for you. You can build companies and products. You can do real world things using sats. So I think even if you're in a gaming server, but I don't think it's going to be called games in the future. It's just going to be called an online space where you are meeting with real people and exchanging sets and hiring AI to do stuff for you. So it's just going to be the real economy, but just more scalable. But anyways, I do have a question for you guys. Since you guys are both like very well traveled, you've lived around the world, but you've decided to come to Bangkok. I wanted to ask why you are bullish on Bangkok as a base to build on Bitcoin.
Okay, and just as I do, I'll throw that question to Sovereign first.
Right. I think it's a great scene because Bangkok is one of the most visited cities in the world. And at the same time, the regulation here, to be honest, I don't know how aggressive they are against Bitcoin, but what I know is like they don't enforce the law. So as long as you don't bother the wrong people, you can do like pretty much whatever you want. So getting back to your question, yeah, I think especially now that Bob has been going on for almost a year, I think we're like getting traction and gravity, and more like Bitcoiners eventually are gonna like drop by Bob. And some of them are like settling here. So that's good news.
Okay, I mean, I'll go. For me, it was maybe a little bit less structured than Sovereign. I mean, you heard my origin story of how I started Bob, but the way the reason why I'm bullish on Bangkok was for the first ever Bob meetup. I sent out, invites to 21, let's say, most toxic Bitcoiners that I can find in and around Bangkok, and they all showed up. And after that, they formed a local Bitcoin Discord group that I think you're also in, where there are discussions on so many different threads, right? Technical, market-based, development, and then organizing weekly talks, to complement our weekly physical meetups, but, all in Thai. And then culminating in this Bitcoin Thailand conference coming up middle of next month. So the reason I'm bullish is, a year ago, I didn't know if there were really any Bitcoiners here, except for maybe these 21 guys. And now Bob Space is where we are. We have, we've started obviously our Bob residency program, where we have developers here sitting and working together and, trying to take their projects to the next level with infrastructure support, etc. So yeah, I'm bullish because people not only come through Bangkok as a transit city, but the Bitcoiners who live here in Thailand, they do proof of work, and they'll continue to do so. So that's why.
That's awesome. And I love that Bob Space exists. So thank you for starting that, because it really is a lighthouse for people like me who kind of hop between cities, and being able to come back to a city and have a home with other Bitcoiners has been such a change in lifestyle in Bangkok. So it's been awesome. I just have one more quick little question, and that is, when do you think the Sat-Bart parody will occur? Which year, if you had to guess in a prediction?
The what? The
Sat-Bart parody.
Sat-Bart parody?
Yes. One sat equals 1 baht.
Tip, I don't look at the price. I don't know. Don't care. Is 1 Bitcoin equal 1 Bitcoin? That's my answer.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay, James, your question, sir.
So, in this economy, or in this stage of the cycle in the bear market, we're all obviously, seeing how affordable, how many sats we can get from stacking. We're all trying to build our stack, and so it really does interest me what things people have recently spent some money on. Like, what is it that you guys have each bought recently that you thought was good value for money? Because I know how much people right now in the Bitcoin space, they seek out value for money. So I was just wondering what you guys have been buying recently.
I just made a purchase yesterday, 9mm from Bull Armory, an Israel gun maker. Beautiful,
Nice.
beautiful firearm piece. Beautiful. Sovereign, you go.
I keep buying sats, man. Like it, IDCA all the way. Every 2 weeks, once a month, doesn't matter. And yeah, then I try to locate some resources to my hobbies. Whenever I have free time, I like to skateboard. So yeah, skateboards break once in a while. So I have to keep renovating. And that's pretty much everything. Yeah, it's a long life I have. It's Bitcoin and skateboarding.
It's funny.
Awesome.
Sovereign is Bitcoin and skateboard. I'm like guns and Bitcoin. I just like one other thing aside from Bitcoin, and I don't know if that's a common thing.
So good.
All right, guys, we're coming to the end of the show. Why don't you guys please tell our audience where to find you, including any parting thoughts for anybody listening? Tip, let's start with you.
Yeah, you can find us hanging out in the world of Orange, which is open to everyone. You can check out at the Orange Mart on Twitter, or orangem.art, a link to the website, and come join us and hang out by the fireside for a chat, or come and open up a shop and earn some sats and stuff. Otherwise, if you're in Thailand, come say hi in real life at Bob Space every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m.
Thanks for the promo, Tip. James?
Yeah, so Orange Mart's website is, as Tip said, it's Orange Mart, one word, but there is a dot between the M and the art, so that's easy to find. On Twitter, I'm at James Vidgie, and then my gamer tag is Maddnz, MADDNZ, so you can find me on Steam and find me in Orange.
Excellent. With that, it's a wrap.